Post-selection stress disorder is not a diagnostic classification in the DSM or something that we would diagnose, but it is a term that was created to try and understand why there was this increase in anxiety.
I see it as fatigue. How often have we heard fatigue being characterized in different ways? And I think that is referencing this experience that a lot of us are going through, where the events leading up to the most recent election have put a lot of people on high alert and expecting the absolute worst possible outcome.
Well, when you have the same conversation over and over again with someone and you do have very differing, ideas, it can create a sense of hopelessness. Will this ever change? What do I do with this? And moving towards acceptance of that other person not changing, right, can open up the conversation more too.
These little computers that we have in our pocket make news and media ever present and always accessible. And that makes it really, really challenging for people to set limits and to set boundaries with how they consume news and media. Adding to that as well, social media in particular is increasingly a place where people access news and learn about the world. And that can be really tricky because there's a whole lot of sources out there based in fact, based in reality, as well as certainly not based in fact. And that's, again, adding to the divisiveness that people are experiencing.
I see families and communities being impacted by partisanship and this increased sense of isolation and perhaps loneliness. I think there's a growing sense that we're so different from our neighbors and the people around us, which leads us to believe that we're in this alone. It's us versus them versus a more productive and healthy way of thinking of we're all in this together. We're in a community facing these issues as a community instead of I have to figure it all out for myself. I'm in this alone.
People wanting to know how to approach their in-laws or extended family as far as how to have the conversations and not have to avoid conversations about politics or about masks or vaccinations, and really struggling to find what level of control they have over other people's decisions. And I think it's largely about trying not to think of it as in I am trying to change the other person as much as I'm trying to understand the other person.
People really struggled with people in their families and communities that have just really opposing views. And with the racial reckoning that we've had, I think there have been a lot of people that have really kind of started on a path of education and really being upset by people who are less on that path. And so I think it's just really highlighted the major divides that were probably there before that we just hadn't really been as open about.
I think it impacts clients' well-being and kind of the mental health in the larger community because it seems to reinforce black and white thinking. We get this us versus them mentality, and we're the good guys, these are the bad guys, when again we're all human and there's so much that's in between. There's so much gray in between, and that's a lot of what we talk about in therapy and all sorts of thinking of you're not all one thing or all another thing. There's so much in between. So how do we consider the gray?
For many people, their political views are really grounded in their morals and values. And so I think our opinions feel really personal. And so then when we are really faced with an opposing view, I think it can feel like kind of an attack on my own or, client's own, views and value system.
Yeah, one of the big topics and issues that I very much identify with my clients is this idea of macro level unknowns. And so I say when I use the terms macro or micro, I'm not referring to value or worth as much as I'm referring to a sense of scale. So micro, for example, can be the individual, the personal responsibilities, the personal day-to-day life of what that looks like. Macro, on the other hand, is more global, involving our nation. So that can be everything from post-election stress to a global pandemic to where our nation at large is headed. And when there is so many macro level unknowns, for example, that can feel like a lot of weight that people are shouldering. And what I've noticed particularly with my clients is that weight on a day-to-day basis makes it really hard for them to focus on their personal responsibilities, their personal self-care, their personal wellness.
When we want to think that our families and communities are full of people that share the same values and goodness as we do, and I think some people really struggled with the idea of like, but wait, if they hold these views, what does that say about them, and what does that say about me if I continue to, how can I be in a relationship with them when we disagree so much, and when, some people feel like other people's views are hurtful to different, groups, and so really just trying to grapple with, I think sometimes seeing people in a much different light and trying to just deal with, what does that mean for now, and how could we go forward?